You may well wonder why it is that I am spending time doing a video on a transit that lasts only another 5 hours. Mercury entered Pisces on March the 15th, and it leaves Pisces and enters Aries in about 5 hours today, April the 3rd, Pacific time, April the 4th in a large part of the world. And that is because, let me just do a quick recap on the Piscean energy, because it there are so many energies at play this year. As you know, some of them have to do with completing a cycle, and some of them absolutely have to do with moving forward into a new cycle. Indeed, as of the middle of December 2020, a new 20-year cycle, some would argue. So the Piscean energies, as a reminder, eclipses went through the sign of Pisces in 2015 and 2016. For a lot of people, at least a lot of my clients, late 2015 and into 2016 is when they most felt the impact of these eclipses. And the sign of Pisces has hosted since then a Mercury retrograde every year. And indeed, when we sort of have these annual cycles, especially since Neptune is still in Pisces, a sign that it rules, some of those eclipse themes continue to ricochet, or we continue to move out of them or spiral out of them. The last new moon, which was around March the 13th or so, was in the sign of Pisces. Sorry for that long and dramatic pause. I was trying to figure out how to organize the information I want to give you. So till April the 11th, on April 11th, we have the new moon in Aries. Till April the 11th, we're still very much in this Piscean cycle. Okay, that's another week. The last of the planets apart from Neptune to leave Pisces is Mercury, which leaves today. And Neptune continues to stay on, of course, for a few more years. Mercury and Neptune conjuncted 4 days ago on March the 29th. So indeed, if you just think back over the past week, if the communications actually let me back up even more, I'm going to do a recap of all this because I'm mentally trying to unravel the jumble of information that is in my mind as far as the sign of Pisces is concerned, and trying to organize it and give it to you in a way, present it to you in a way that makes sense. So, the planet Mercury is a planet of communications, most of all. Written communications, social media, technology, the phone, talking, speaking, listening, fitting into those around you. It even can govern relatives and siblings and neighbors and neighborhood in your immediate vicinity, commuting, cars, vehicles, a sort of a normal commute as you go about your business, your normal day-to-day routine in some ways, transactions, interactions with customer service, being on the phone, scheduling appointments, being on time, being late, all these things that in today's day and age have so much importance insofar as they keep our life moving forward. Technology, communications, transactions, interactions, these are all ruled by Mercury. Things like the mail, counting things, In the sign of Pisces, Mercury is not at its strongest. And indeed, as we headed towards March the 15th, a number of people, including myself, started to feel what I will call Mercury retrograde type of symptoms and behaviors all around us. Technology malfunctioning, weird interactions with customer service, all sorts of things that you would typically attribute to a Mercury retrograde. But the funny thing was, unlike a Mercury retrograde, when you sought to solve it, the solution came pretty easily. It wasn't a protracted day's worth of bizarre jumble of trying to sort something out. Once you put your mind to it, once you sorted through the morass, you were able to come to or find a solution relatively quickly. But we did run into these kinds of Mercury retrograde moments, or weak Mercury moments, in the sign of Pisces. As I've explained in my last couple of videos, I think Mercury is weak because the planet of communication is in a sign that very much does not favor and is not sort of aligned with, or it does not contain the characteristic of clear, material, concise communication. Pisces is not about being pinned down. Pisces is about dissolving boundaries and being one with spirit and the universe and always being open and being open to change and being open. It's not a definite sign. And Mercury, insofar as it's the planet of communication, likes definite, precise interactions, communications for things to work well, train schedules to be kept on time, and things for things to be, you swipe a credit card, you expect it to work properly. There's so much that is Mercury dependent in our life in 2021. So Mercury debilitated in Pisces, forgive me. Pisces being a sign that hosted eclipses in 2015, but especially 2016, in some crisis from there. Venus was in Pisces just before Mercury's entrance. I did a video on Venus in Pisces, and I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. And with Mercury in Pisces, it wouldn't surprise me if since March the 15th to today, and this continues for another week, this is why I am doing this video. This is a very Mercury in Pisces video, to be perfectly honest with you. It's like, how can I give you the information? The only way I can seem to give you the information is by swimming through this Piscean swamp and getting the information to you. There isn't much organization around it, but I will summarize it in a few minutes. With Mercury in Pisces, wouldn't surprise me since March 15th to April the 3rd, but continues for another week while we are under the influence of the Pisces new moon till April the 11th, when we have the Aries new moon, that we have been processing, perhaps communicating about, thinking about, as we spiral out of, as we continue to move through the crises of 2015 and 2016, almost every year around this time. But this year, with Mercury's presence in Pisces, we may have really wanted to find definition in a murkiness, because crises often create murkiness, to reach some clarity or attempt to get some answers. The answers are most likely to be felt in Piscean intuitive nebulous form. They're most likely to appear like a bubble coming up through the ocean and bursting on the surface, or in water in a tub and bursting to the surface. That would be very Mercury in Pisces. There's a desire, there has been a need, and there will continue to be a need and desire to process and to unravel the threads. It's like a piece of yarn that is raveled, and Mercury in Pisces is trying to unravel this yarn to be able to provide definition and answers. And without definition and answers, it's very, very difficult to know what to communicate about a crisis, especially when it's 4 or 5 years behind us and we might be trying to heal or move forward or put some definition around it. Now, Mercury did conjunct Neptune 4 days ago. So a conjunction with Neptune typically deals with some sort of loss, but may also deal with some sort of artistic or creative activity. So as you headed to the 29th of March, did you receive some sort of communication around or about a creative activity? If it was writing, it could have been inspiration. Inspiration and the muses, especially this connection to this imaginative realm that is the source of so much inspiration, musically, drunk on life, drunk on spirit, spirituality, communication related to spirituality. I'm not talking about the spirituality and the self-help guides that help us get us through life, but I'm talking about the kind of spirituality that comes with and is associated with seclusion and loss of material attachment. And then, as I've mentioned with Neptune, there's also the issue of gaslighting and deception. So communication around deception. Trying to figure out what the details and the specifics are. Was there deception? What did it look like? Who did it come from? How was it managed? What are the specifics? What are the details? If I try and find a solution, I need to be able to identify the problem. And since March the 15th till April the 3rd, today certainly with the presence of Mercury in Pisces, but again for another week, this desperate desire to unravel these threads, these nebulous threads, and achieve a certain definition may well have been the characteristic of the time. And especially if you know where Pisces sits in your chart, what house it belongs in, and what that house stands for, you may well be able to connect to this reading in an even stronger way and go, yes, I am trying to solve this. Yes, this goes back to 2015, 2016. And the only way I can get anywhere is to actually probably end up doing something else or focusing on something else or watching Netflix or TV or something to shut off the mind so that the insight can bubble up. And then there's a question of dealing with whatever's bubbled up and trying to put some rationality around it. Is this true? Is this fantasy? Is this real? Because Mercury is going to try and want rational proof and definition around whatever it is that's coming up. Now, with Mercury leaving Pisces and entering Aries, it may be that it is over this next week that some clarity starts to appear, that because Mercury is no longer debilitated, but we are still no longer weak, but we are still under the influence of the Pisces new moon, it may be that we are able to actually find some greater definition or peace of mind, or actually able to get some messages out, or actually get some clarity, or actually try and put something in place and pin something down, or feel like by the time we get to the April new moon that we're done with phase 1 of Pisces. Remember, the reason why I can't quite let Pisces go this year is that in a month and a half, it's April the 3rd, in a month and a half, Jupiter comes into Pisces to surprise us all. Jupiter typically spends 13 odd months in one sign. This year, since the middle of December, it has sped through Aquarius. I'm telling you, it's a Mercury in Pisces reading. It goes into Pisces in the middle of May, goes retrograde, comes back out of Pisces at the end of July, and then finally finishes up its Aquarius cycle by the end of the year. Wherever Jupiter goes, it ends a 12 to 13 year cycle and starts a 12 to 13 year cycle with greater emphasis on the 12 rather than the 13. It creates an auspicious new beginning. It's a blessing. It's an ending and a new beginning in a new direction. Now, in Aquarius, this is all making sense. We spent so many videos talking about Aquarius in January, February, and March, understandably. And that's another thing to remember, which is that whatever is going on in the sign of Aquarius for the next 20 years, till March of 2023, in January, February, and March of this year, continues somehow. The story extends and continues into the sign of Pisces, because the following sign in the following house tends to take the story forward. So the sign of Aquarius continues to be receiving some energy. Even after Jupiter leaves it for about a month and a half, middle of May to end of July, it'll have Saturn there, which is a pretty heavy hitter. The sign of Pisces has gotten its first phase, a second phase of intimations of a new 12-year cycle, at least, if not a new 12, 13-year cycle beginning for certain people, really happens in the middle of May to the end of July. And then next year, 2022, is when the spark is really lit for this new 12 to 13 year cycle to get going. So we can't quite let go of Pisces. So despair not, but at the same time, if you feel like you have not been able to get a certain amount of clarity or communications out that you have wanted to relate it to the sign of Pisces so far, it could be that over the course of next week, and this would be connected to crises in 2015, 2016, especially 2016, and with Mercury entering Aries later today, there will be greater clarity, greater definition. Some of this Mercury retrograde activity should fall by the wayside, and things should start to function a little bit more efficiently. And April, more than any other month this year, has so much forward movement associated with it. And of course, when Mercury goes into Aries, again, this new year starting theme with the sun coming into Aries becomes even more expanded. But for another week, with Mercury now in a stronger sign in about 5 hours' time, see if you can finally get some definition and clarity out over the next week so that you can feel like whatever it is that you wanted to get done with this particular round of Pisces energy, you've been able to make some progress over the next week or so. It'll help you. It'll help you. It'll help you put some things in place and get some clarity, because by the time you get to then the middle of May to end of July, there's a whole new story trying to brew here. And it is going to be connected to the eclipses again in 2015, 2016. It's the same part of the chart that has been hit over and over again with different intensity, but there's consequence. You know, where the eclipses go, they kind of leave it's like a hurricane goes through that part of the house, you know. And with the Pisces eclipses, they were really pretty intense. There was a fair amount of activity at that time. And with Mercury retrograde there every year around this time, and then this year, no Mercury retrograde in Pisces, but Mercury in Pisces on the heels of Venus, and then the Neptune conjunctions have been very strongly felt. And there are other transits around these new moons and full moons that have also been quite intense. If you look at this next week, make one of your priorities finishing up some Piscean activities and harnessing the power of clearer communication and interactions. You may find that when you get to the new moon in Aries on April the 11th, and it is in many respects, not in all respects, but in many respects, one of the nicest new moons I have seen. The moon in Aries and Venus in Aries are not necessarily very well placed, and they're agitated, but the new moon itself, in terms of what it is creating, is very forward-looking and really quite positive. It's not quite as agitated as the full moon a week ago. You know, there's still some agitation, but it'll move you forward. Crises in Pisces 2015-2016. Mercury retrograde ever since then. With Venus conjuncting Neptune this year and Mercury conjuncting Neptune 4 days ago. This video, most of all, is for whatever you've been feeling over the past week or so. And if it has something to do with creativity and the arts, good for you. If it has something to do with spirituality, good for you. You're going on a retreat, something to do with some sort of isolation, you're being hospitalized in a way that's going to heal you, you're being given a timeout in some way, good for you. You're needing to take a nap, good for you. Those would have been good strategies to use for this kind of minor Mercury retrograde energy. But if it has to do with unraveling some murky, deceptive gaslighty situation, then the idea of unraveling those threads may have proved to be really quite challenging. The motivation was there. It just came in weird ways, like that bubble that comes through the ocean and you go, oh, I was not thinking. Trying to make sense of things over the past 3 weeks has not been the best strategy. Now, over the next week, while we're still under the shadow of the new moon in Pisces, with Mercury moving into a better sign, you could feel and you could maybe take some actions that actually try to and kind of put a lid on certain things, or at least attempt to continue to unravel whatever it is that you're trying to unravel or solve, or get some definition or get some clarity around certain topics related to crises that go back to 2015, 2016, and since then, but with greater ability over the next week. Okay? My next video is going to be about Mercury in Aries, because Mercury is going to be in Aries in 4 or 5 hours' time. But I did want to leave you with this message. If you found it useful, feel free to share it, like the video, give the video greater circulation on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button so you're notified every time I do a new video. My contact information is going to be in the description area below, so you can contact me there if you're interested in inquiring about rates for readings or rates for me creating an easy-to-read version of your chart that tells you which sign is in which house and what those houses stand for. Don't send me your personal information until you get my rate information. If you want to move forward, we can take it from there. Okay? That's it for me for now. Thanks for your patience. Bye.